got skills. You guys wish you had my skills. Nah, I'm playing. I'm just being dumb, man. But welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate everybody stopping by. I kind of went back to yesterday and I got a game from round 4 and it's game 3. And I think a majority of people have already either heard about it or seen the game. It's kind of famous in this whole tournament. It has a pretty key feature in it that we'll be getting to. But for all of my people in the Philippines, magandang umaga, amasaw tayo, mabuting pagbati, you know, Masaya Komu Kiri Kang Muli. Appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Maraming salamat for coming and checking out my stuff. Anybody who speaks Russian, privyet to you and spasibo. Appreciate you guys coming by. And I actually had more. Kakdela. Yeah, I had another one. Yeah, Kakdela. How are you guys doing? Okay, I had a feeling I had another phrase in Russian. Appreciate you. All right, if you guys are ready to go, we got Wesley versus Nepomniachtchi. Let's take a look. All right, so we got E4, E6, D4, D5. Knight coming to C3. We got knight to F6, E5, knight F to D7. We got F4, C5. Knight comes to F3, knight to C6. Bishop comes to E3. So we have the French defense classical Steinitz Boleslavsky. I think I'm saying that correctly. Boleslavsky variation. So yes, that is a mouthful, but I think this opening is very interesting for me personally because I played this from the white and the black side. So I'm pretty familiar with the opening pretty well. So it's always interesting when you play an opening and then you play, you have to defend it pretty much the same from the other side. It gives you unique insight into it because not only are you kind of knowing like how you want to try to win as white, but you're also understanding what you should be kind of looking out for as black or vice versa, however the situation goes. So that's just me personally. We got A6, queen comes to D2. We have B5, A3, queen comes to A5. And as you guys can see, black's goal is to start expanding on the queen side because, your pawns are pointing in this direction. White is pretty much trying to do something similar on this side because, their pawns are pointing towards the king side. So this is very typical of French. And, the position is pretty close. So it's not too big of a deal to, kind of leave your king in the center for a move or two, a little bit longer. So we see pawn taking C5 and bishop taking C5. Now, something that was pretty solid was actually bishop to E2. Just kind of maintaining attention. Like I said, castling isn't of the utmost importance when the position is closed. So that's when you have an open position, when you want to be castled immediately. So like I said, we said knight to C5. We see knight coming to E2. We got queen to B6, queen to E3. Just putting a nice little pin on this this knight. Trying to see if we can't pop in a B4 situation going on. But black plays their own B4. So we have C3, and C3 is the novelty of the game. First time this is seen, and it's just trying to break up this little pawn. And then once the pawn does take in a direction, you're going to be trying to push B4, which is what happens. We see pawn takes C3 and we see B4. And it might seem like, man, I'm lost. Like my queen is about to get took. But black has knight to A4 and that saves the day. So it protects the queen. So we have queen to B6. Queen takes B6, knight takes B6. We have knight takes C3. So as you guys can see, everything is fairly equal. Each side is doing pretty good. They pretty much have their stuff out. They just pretty much have like a move or two to get completed. So we see F6 by black. Pawn takes F6, pawn takes F6, and we see castles by white. Now, it might look a little bit crazy. You're thinking, man, there's like so much space over here. There's like a file open. It kind of looks like it's going to be kind of crazy. But the thing you have to remember is when the queens are off the board, you are a lot safer. You don't have as many tactics, as many situations and possibilities that will come up. So, you're looking pretty good. So, this definitely isn't too bad. So we got bishop to B7. Bishop comes to D3. We have E5. Rook H to E1. And you might be thinking here like, hold on a second. Can't black just fork me with E4? And yes, they can. But the thing you have to remember is black's king is dead set in the center of the board. So it's not a true fork. So, but we do see E4. Bishop comes down to C2. Like I'm saying, this pawn is pinned. So you're not worried about, getting your knight taken. So we see castles by black, and then we got knight to H4. So yeah, we've had the time to be able to move both of our pieces out of the way. So we got knight to E7. Bishop comes to B3. you know, that's a pretty good diagonal for this bishop to be on because, you know, the king is right at the very end. So we got rook f to c8. Like I said, it's not a big deal. You got king to b2, but you have knight to c4 with check. And the problem with this particular move is the fact that you're trying to defend this pawn, but then you're trying to defend the knight as well. So something has to give. So the bishop has to take on c4. We see rook taking c4. We got knight to a4, rook a to c8, and then we have the really nice rook knight to c5 move. And what this does is it disconnects the coordination of these rooks. So it kind of makes this rook a little bit uncomfortable. So we got bishop to c6, rook to c1, and so we're pretty much forcing to trade with the rook. So the rook takes c1, rook takes c1. We got d4, and it kind of looks a little bit crazy because you're like, man, you know, these past pawns look kind of monstrous. It's a little bit better for black, but it's nothing, you know, where it's like the end of the world for white, you know, here. So we got rook to c4. We got d3, knight takes e4, rook, bishop takes e4, then we have rook takes e4, knight comes to d5. We see rook to d4, which puts a nice counterattack on this knight. We got the rook to c2 with check, king comes to b3, rook to c3 with check, king goes back down to b2, rook comes to c2 with check, king to b3, and it looks like we might, you know, repeat here. But Wesley says, you know what, I don't want that, man. So after rook to c3, we see king to a4. Sidestepping around, we got knight coming to e3. We have b5, pawn takes b5, king takes b5. We have rook takes a3. We have knight down to f3. Knight takes g2. We have king to b4. We have rook to a2. We got f5, sorry. We got knight to e3. Rook takes d3. Knight takes f5. We have rook down to d2, offering a trade of the rooks. Which isn't that bad of a situation, even though white is down a pawn. This is the type of an endgame you can hold, especially because of a main feature in the position. You have a rook pawn. So at the end of the day, if you do want to try to, you know, get traded down, you can always give up your knight for this pawn and make sure you get your king in the corner. And there's not really going to be much that black can do. So we got rook to a7, and then we have king to c3. Now, this is probably what you guys heard about. So a lot of you guys, I think, saw the game. Either that or you probably heard about this situation. This is a game-losing blunder. This literally loses the game completely on the spot. For any of you that did see the live stream of it from Chess24, you guys saw the reaction from Wesley. So when he did it, he was just kind of like sitting there like, man, I can't believe I just dropped my knight. Like, you know, Jan is going to make rook a3. So he was like finding a resign button. And then Jan Nepomniachtchi goes rook e7. Everybody was like, what? Hold on, man. How do you miss? I don't know. You know, I think Jan Nepomniachtchi just really wasn't paying attention, I think, to Wesley So's move. I think he just was like, hey, he's going to move king c4, and I'm just going to go rook e7. And it was really an autopilot move. He literally took like 2 seconds to make the move. So he didn't sit there and think about it. It's crazy because Wesley So was down to like 10 seconds at this point. And Jan Nepomniachtchi had like 3 minutes. So, I mean, you think it's kind of something that he kind of, you know, he could have kind of like looked for or just paid attention, just took a couple extra seconds. But after king to c3, he did go rook to e7. So this gave Wesley So a chance. So Wesley was like, oh, man, shoot. Man, I'm chilling. So let me go ahead and go rook to f2. And I'm not sure at what point, maybe in the game or at the end of the game or even post game, when Jan Nepomniachtchi figured out he missed this, but you can guarantee by now he's realized it. He's heard about it. Usually you see, you know, immediately when you get up with the game, you usually look at it and stuff. So, I mean, it don't take me but a couple of seconds usually to figure out that I blundered horribly. But we got king to f7. We got knight to d4. We got knight down to e3. We got king to d3. We got knight to g4. We have rook to g2. We have h5 starting to kind of get the pawns rolling a little bit. We got king down to d2. We have rook to a7. And rook to a7 I think is pretty instructive because what it's doing is it's giving what's called checking distance. Now, when you're in end games, something that you always want to try to do, whether it's a bishop or a rook or a queen or something like that, you always want to try, especially with rooks, you want to try to give a checking distance. So instead of moving, let's say, for example, like moving rook over here, which allows king stepping over to c2, you're trying to give as much distance as possible between the rook and the king. So that way, when you check, you don't really have to worry about the king being so close to the rook and knocking it away. So it's just a little concept, you know, type deal. So we see rook to a7. We got knight down to e2. Rook to a2 with check. We see king to d3. We got rook to a3 with check, and then we see king to e4. And we have reached a point in the game where if you want to stop the video and you want to guess the winning move, it basically right here, it's black to win and black to move and win. So if you want to go ahead and stop the video and find the winning move for black, go ahead and do so. All right, cool. So it is actually a check, and the move is actually f5 with check. Now, f5 with check, it does two things immediately. The first thing is obviously you cannot take here because you're going to be running into knight to e3 with check, and that is forking your king and your rook, and so you're just going to be dropping massive amounts of material that you cannot afford, or it's going to force a combination where you're going to be losing material anyway. Now, after f5 check, you're going to be probably trying to hold on with king to f4. That's going to allow king to f6. We got rook to g3 trying to trade rooks. The rook comes to a4 with check. You go king f3. We have king to g5. Yes, putting yourself in a pin, but allowing you the possibility of pushing these two pawns. So you don't even have the ability to pin the knight with h3 because you're going to see f4. And then it really doesn't too much matter what you do in this position. You're going to be losing material. So let's just take rook to g2, for example. You're going to see rook to a3 with check. King might sneak out to try to go to e4. Then you have f3. Alternatively, after f4, you might see rook to g1, trying to give you a little bit more distance. You're going to see rook to a3, king going to e4. You're going to see rook to e3, and that is also a fork, and that's going to be winning your knight. So there's those are pretty much the two best, those are the two best, variations that you can choose. And, they're literally both losing. So this was actually a really, really nice move that was missed by Jan in the game. So maybe Jan was a little bit tired at this point. I'm not sure. But he was kind of missing things that he wouldn't normally miss. So we got rook to e3 in the position instead of f5. So we got king going to d4. We have rook to a3. We have king back to e4. And this is crazy because this actually allows the tactic again. So this actually allows the win a second time. And Jan misses it twice. So like I said, I don't know if he was just kind of tired or like what the situation was. But we got h3 by white. We have f5. So he does find f5, but it's not as crushing as it was before. So we see king to d4. We have king to g5. Pawn takes g4. Now this actually allows a draw. Even though it kind of seems like you're getting your pawns back connected and you're going to just be up. You're going to be able to force these pawns through. There is no way now to force the win. So we got pawn takes g4, rook to f2. We have h4. And this is an idea that I really have to give Wesley So a lot of credit because he was able to find the draw in this position. And what he does is he sidesteps his rook to f2. And he's planning to bring his rook up and behind the king and basically just check the king to death and put his pieces in such a way where it's impossible to push the pawns down. So after we see rook back to f8, we have g3, rook comes to g8, and then after king to f5, Wesley So is just planning to just like switch his rook up and down, move his rook up and down on that file and cut the king off and not allow him to get back. And as you guys will see coming up, rook comes to g7, we see rook to a4 with check. And that pretty much just allows you to alternate between the two squares with, your king, which is the draw. Rook comes to a3 with check, king to d4. So if you want to, you can kind of go back and forth that way. But you got king to f6, rook to g8, king to f7, rook down to g5, king to f6, rook to g8, king to f5, and then rook to g7. It is in this position that the players do agree to a draw. Basically... like I said, I mean, you're really the only move you can halfway try to make is going to be h3, but then that's just going to give your pawn away with check. And you don't have the opportunity to take this this pesky knight because you're going to be able to get your rook back behind the pawn. So if you're thinking, oh, that pawn is going to get pushed down, you're going to be able to just come behind it. So that's going to be lost. And pretty much it just puts you in a position where you're just going to be checking. You definitely don't want to make this blunder because you're going to be you're going to be doing the same type of skewer situation that was available to Jan Nepomniachtchi before. So that was the end of that game. It was really, really interesting. Like I said, that Jan, he missed rook to a3. But then he also missed 2 different opportunities to fork, to check and to get some forks generated right there. So not really sure what was going on there. Like I said, he might have just kind of been tired. They've been playing a lot, but he got to get his strength up because he is playing the World Championships later in the year. So, but for all of my people in the Philippines with the rest of the languages, let me try to get through these languages. I think I'm doing a little bit better, but let's see. So I got Maanyong Buntog. I have Mayad na Agahan. Naibag na Bigat. Masentos Yakabusan. Marhe na Aga. Buenos Dias. Maanyong Aga. This is where it gets tough. Let me see. Mapia na Uma. And I have Kapian Kapanu Dios. I got it. Yes, sir. And then I have another one that I just did. I have Mayap Abak. And that is Kapampangan. It's tough, man. Like learning some languages when you speak a certain language are a little bit tough. I'm getting through it. I'm working through it. But Kapampangan. I think I'm saying that correctly. Kapampangan. All right, cool. I'm gonna get it. I'm working on it, but I think I'm doing good. This is like literally the list of languages I got right here. So I have like how many? So I got Tagalog, 3, 6, 9, 10. So that with Tagalog, I got 11 of them. So I got 8, 9 more to go. So appreciate you guys very much. For all of my people that speak Russian, spasibo. Appreciate you guys watching my video, and I'll see you guys next time.